Eric Collins woke up feeling nervous. Today was the most important day of his life. After years of studying space and stars, he finally had an interview at Horizon Space Agency. This was his dream job since he was a little boy. Eric got out of bed and walked to his small bathroom. He brushed his teeth and took a quick shower. The hot water helped calm his nerves a bit. He dried himself and went to his closet where his best suit was hanging. He had bought it last week just for this interview. It was dark blue and fit him well. "You can do this," Eric said to himself as he put on his white shirt. His hands were shaking a little as he tried to button it up. He had prepared for weeks for this interview. He knew all about Horizon space missions and their plans for the future. He wanted to be part of those plans. After getting dressed, Eric went to the kitchen and made some coffee. He couldn't eat anything because his stomach felt tight with worry. He looked at the clock on the wall. It was 7:30 a.m. His interview was at 9 a.m. The Horizon building was across town about 40 minutes by bus. He had planned to get there early. Eric gathered his things. He put his resume in a folder and slipped it into his bag. He checked that he had his phone, wallet, and keys. Taking one last look in the mirror, he straightened his tie and took a deep breath. "Today, everything changes," he said to himself. Outside, the spring morning was bright and cool. Eric walked quickly down the street toward the bus stop. He felt the weight of his dreams on his shoulders. This job would change everything for him. No more tiny apartment, no more eating cheap noodles every night. He could finally make his parents proud. As he walked, Eric went over the answers he had practiced. He knew they would ask why he wanted to work at Horizon. He would tell them about watching the stars as a child, about building model rockets with his dad, about studying late into the night all through college. Eric was so deep in thought that at first he didn't notice the noise. Then he heard a groan and turned his head. An old man had fallen on the sidewalk about 20 feet ahead. The man was trying to get up but kept falling back down. Eric looked around. Other people were walking by, some glancing at the old man but no one stopping. A woman in a business suit walked right past without even looking. A teenage boy with headphones didn't seem to notice at all. Eric checked his watch. It was 7:45 a.m. He had plenty of time to catch his bus. He walked over to the old man. "Are you okay, sir?" Eric asked, bending down. The old man looked up. His face was pale and he was breathing hard. He was thin with white hair and wore a plain brown jacket that seemed too big for him. I need my pills," the old man said between deep breaths. "In my apartment, can't breathe well." Eric looked around again, hoping someone else might help. But everyone kept walking by, eyes forward or down at their phones. "Where do you live?" Eric asked. The old man pointed with a shaky hand to a building across the street. "Third floor, apartment 304, he said. "Frank Martinez, that's me." Eric helped Frank to his feet. The old man leaned heavily on him. Eric looked at his watch again. It was 7:50 a.m. If he helped Frank to his apartment and then came back, he might miss his bus. There was another bus at 8:30 a.m., but that would cut it very close for his interview. "Let's get you home, Mr. Martinez," Eric said. He knew what he had to do. It took them almost 15 minutes to cross the street and climb the stairs to the third floor. There was no elevator in the old building. Frank had to stop and rest several times. By the time they reached apartment 304, Eric knew he had missed his bus. Frank's hands were shaking too much to put the key in the lock. Eric took the keys and opened the door. Inside, the apartment was small but neat. There were pictures on the walls. Many showed a younger Frank in a military uniform. Some showed him with other soldiers. A few showed him with famous people Eric didn't recognize right away. "My pills," Frank said, pointing to the kitchen. On the counter, orange bottle. Eric found the pills and a glass of water. He brought them to Frank, who had sat down in an old armchair. Frank took 2 pills and drank the water slowly. "Thank you, son," Frank said after a few minutes. His breathing was better now. Not many would stop these days. Eric smiled, but inside he felt a twist of worry. He checked his watch. It was 8:15 a.m. Even if he left right now and ran to the bus stop, he would still be late for his interview. His chance at his dream job was slipping away. "Happy to help," Eric said. "Are you feeling better now?" Frank nodded. "Much better. You saved me a trip to the hospital." He looked at Eric more closely. "You're all dressed up. Were you going somewhere important?" Eric tried to keep his smile. "Just an interview." "An interview? For a job?" Frank asked. When Eric nodded, Frank frowned. "What time was it?" 9 o'clock, Eric said. Frank looked at the clock on his wall. "You're going to be late because of me." Eric shrugged. "It's okay. They'll have other openings." "Where was the interview?" Frank asked. "Horizon Space Agency," Eric said, unable to keep the disappointment from his voice. "I've wanted to work there since I was a kid." Frank's eyes widened. "Space, huh? That's something." He was quiet for a moment. "Why don't you call them? Tell them you're helping an old man who fell. Maybe they'll understand." Eric thought about it but shook his head. "They have hundreds of people trying to get this job. They won't wait for me." He tried to sound brave. "Really, it's okay." Frank didn't seem convinced. "At least let me make you some coffee. It's the least I can do." Eric knew he had missed his chance. The next bus would get him to Horizon at 9:20 a.m. at the earliest. His interview would be long over. He looked at Frank and nodded. "Coffee would be nice, thank you." As Frank got up to make coffee, Eric noticed more of the pictures on the walls. In one, a much younger Frank stood next to a man who looked very familiar. Eric looked closer. It was Chuck Norris, the famous actor. They had their arms around each other's shoulders and were both smiling in front of a helicopter. "Is that Chuck Norris?" Eric asked, pointing to the picture. Frank looked over and smiled. "Sure is. Chuck and I served together years ago. We've been friends ever since." He turned back to making coffee. "Sometimes life takes strange turns, son. But in my experience, good things happen to good people. You might have missed your interview, but helping someone in need is never the wrong choice." Eric sat down at Frank's small kitchen table. He took one last look at his watch and then put it in his pocket. The interview was gone. But somehow, sitting in this small apartment with Frank Martinez, he couldn't bring himself to regret his choice. Frank made coffee for Eric in a small pot on the stove. The kitchen was tiny but clean. Everything had its place. Frank moved slowly but seemed to know exactly where each thing was. "Sugar?" Frank asked. "Just a little, thanks," Eric said. Frank brought 2 mugs to the table and sat down across from Eric. His breathing was much better now. The color had come back to his face. "So, tell me about this space job," Frank said. He sipped his coffee and looked at Eric with kind eyes. Eric smiled a little. Even though he had missed his interview, he still loved talking about space. "I applied to be a junior engineer at Horizon. They're working on new ways to travel between planets, maybe even to other stars someday." "And that's what you want to do? Travel to the stars?" Frank asked. "I want to help build the ships that will take us there," Eric said. "Since I was a kid, I've known that's what I wanted to do." Frank nodded and looked at the pictures on his wall. "I wanted to fly planes when I was young. Ended up in helicopters in the Army. Not quite the same, but close enough." Eric looked again at the photo with Chuck Norris. "How did you meet him?" he asked. Frank's eyes got a faraway look. "That's a long story. We were on a mission together. Can't talk about all of it, but Chuck was there as some kind of special helper. We got stuck in a bad spot. I pulled him out of there." He never forgot it. Eric listened as Frank told stories about his life. Frank had been married once, but his wife had died 10 years ago. They never had children. He had served in the Army for 20 years. After that, he worked as a helicopter pilot for a news station until he retired. "Now it's just me and my memories," Frank said. He didn't sound sad, just matter of fact. Eric looked at his phone. It was almost 10 a.m. now. The interview was definitely over. He should feel upset, but somehow sitting here with Frank, hearing his stories, made it hard to be too sad. "I should probably get going," Eric said. "Is there anything else you need before I leave?" Frank shook his head. You've done more than enough, son. I'm sorry about your interview. It's okay, Eric said. There will be other jobs. Frank got up and went to a drawer. He took out a small notepad and a pen. He wrote something down and tore off the page. Here's my phone number, Frank said, handing the paper to Eric. If you ever want to hear more boring stories from an old man, give me a call. Eric took the paper and put it in his pocket. Your stories aren't boring, and I might take you up on that. As Eric walked to the door, Frank called after him. Hey, what's your name? I never asked. Eric Collins, he said. Frank smiled. Well, Eric Collins, you're a good man. The world needs more people like you. Eric left the apartment feeling strange. He had missed the most important interview of his life, but he didn't feel like he had made a mistake. He had done the right thing. The next few days were hard. Eric sent his resume to other companies, but none of them were Horizon. He tried not to think about what might have been. He kept himself busy with his part-time job at the library and working on small rocket models in his apartment. On the third day after the missed interview, Eric called Frank. The old man sounded happy to hear from him. How are you feeling? Eric asked. Much better, Frank said. The doctor gave me some new pills. Says I need to eat more bananas too. Something about potassium. Eric laughed. I'm glad you're doing better. How about you? Frank asked. Any news on the job front? Not really, Eric said. I've applied to a few places, but nothing like Horizon. Don't give up, Frank said. Something will come along. After hanging up, Eric felt better. Talking to Frank was easy. The old man had lived an interesting life and didn't seem to judge Eric for his choices. Later that evening, Eric was heating up some soup for dinner when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number but answered anyway. It might be about one of his job applications. Hello? Eric said. Is this Eric Collins? A deep voice asked. It sounded familiar, like someone from TV or the movies. Yes, this is Eric, he said. My name is Chuck Norris. I believe you helped my friend Frank Martinez a few days ago. Eric almost dropped his phone. He sat down on his small couch, his soup forgotten. Yes, sir, Eric said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. I helped Mr. Martinez get his medication. Frank told me what happened, Chuck Norris said. He also told me you missed an important job interview because of it. It was the right thing to do, Eric said. Mr. Martinez needed help. Not everyone would make that choice, Chuck said. Frank and I go way back. He saved my life once, did he tell you that? No, sir, he didn't, Eric said. That's Frank for you. Never one to brag. Chuck's voice was warm with friendship. Listen, I understand. You're interested in working at Horizon Space Agency. Eric's heart started beating faster. Yes, sir, very much. I happen to know some people there, Chuck said. I've been on their advisory board for years. It's not public knowledge. Frank told me about your background and your interest in space. I'd like to help if you're okay with that. Eric couldn't believe what he was hearing. Chuck Norris wanted to help him get a job at Horizon. It felt like a dream. That would be amazing, Eric said. But I don't want special treatment. I want to earn my place. Chuck laughed. I like you already, son. Don't worry. I'm not going to get you a job you don't deserve, but I can get you in the door. After that, it's all you. Does that sound fair? Yes, sir. That sounds more than fair, Eric said. Good. I'm going to give your contact information to Dr. Alice Bennett. She's the director of special projects at Horizon. Expect an email from her tomorrow. And Eric? Yes, sir. Thank you for helping, my friend. People like you make this world worth fighting for. After Chuck hung up, Eric sat in silence for a long time. His soup got cold on the counter. He couldn't believe what had just happened. Chuck Norris had called him. Chuck Norris was going to help him get a chance at Horizon, all because he had stopped to help an old man on the street. Eric finally got up and went to the window. The night sky was clear and full of stars. Somewhere up there were planets waiting to be explored, stars waiting to be reached. And now, against all odds, he might still have a chance to be part of that journey. He thought about Frank and how close he had come to just walking past him that morning. One small choice had changed everything. Eric looked at the stars again and made a promise to himself. No matter what happened next, he would always try to do the right thing. Because sometimes the right thing led to places you never expected to go. Eric woke up early the next morning. He had hardly slept. His mind kept going back to the phone call with Chuck Norris. It seemed too good to be true. He checked his email as soon as he opened his eyes. There was nothing yet from Dr. Bennett. He got up and made coffee. His apartment felt different somehow. Yesterday it had seemed small and sad. Today it felt like a waiting room, a place between his old life and something new. Eric tried to keep busy. He cleaned his kitchen. He organized his books. He even fixed the loose handle on his bathroom door. Anything to keep from checking his email every 5 minutes. At 10:32 a.m. the email arrived. The subject line read, "Meeting request, Dr. Alice Bennett, Horizon Space Agency." Eric's hands shook as he opened it. The message was short and to the point. Dr. Bennett would like to meet with Eric tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. at Horizon headquarters. The address was included. At the end, there was a line that made Eric read it twice. "Please bring identification for security clearance. This meeting concerns a matter of special interest." Eric replied right away saying he would be there. Then he called Frank to tell him the news. "That's wonderful," Frank said when he heard. "Chuck works fast." "I'm nervous," Eric admitted. "What if I mess up?" "Just be yourself," Frank said. That's who Chuck recommended, after all. The next day, Eric put on the same blue suit he had worn on the day he met Frank. It felt like the right thing to do. He took the bus across town to the Horizon building. It was a tall glass tower that reflected the clouds. The Horizon logo, a stylized planet with a ring around it, was on the front doors. Inside, a security guard checked Eric's ID and made a phone call. A few minutes later, a young woman with short red hair came to meet him. "Mr. Collins?" "I'm Judy, Dr. Bennett's assistant. Please follow me." They went into an elevator. Judy used a special key card to access the top floor. They rode up in silence. Eric's stomach felt tight with worry. The elevator opened directly into a large office. The walls were glass and showed a view of the whole city. A woman sat behind a desk looking at a computer screen. She was about 50 with gray hair cut short. When she saw Eric, she stood up and smiled. "Mr. Collins, thank you for coming. I'm Dr. Alice Bennett." She shook Eric's hand firmly. "Please have a seat." Eric sat in a chair across from her desk. Dr. Bennett sat down and looked at him for a moment. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked. Eric swallowed. "Chuck Norris called me. He said he would tell you about me." Dr. Bennett nodded. "Yes, he did. He told me you missed your interview with us because you were helping his friend Frank Martinez." "That's right," Eric said. "Mr. Martinez needed his heart medication." "That was a difficult choice," Dr. Bennett said. "Most people would have kept walking." Eric didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Dr. Bennett opened a folder on her desk. "I've looked at your application. Your grades were excellent. Your recommendations were strong. You would have had a good chance at the position you applied for." Eric felt a flicker of hope. "Is that position still open?" "No," Dr. Bennett said. Eric's heart sank. "But I'm not interested in that position for you anymore." She stood up and walked to a wall that was covered with a large screen. She touched it and a picture appeared. It showed a spaceship unlike any Eric had seen before. "This is Project Starlight," Dr. Bennett said. "It's not public knowledge. In fact, it's classified at the highest level." The ship on the screen was sleek and beautiful. It didn't look like the rockets or shuttles Eric knew. It was more like something from science fiction. "What is it?" Eric asked, standing up to look closer. "Humanity's first real starship," Dr. Bennett said. Her voice was proud. "We've had a breakthrough in propulsion technology. This ship will be able to reach Proxima Centauri." Eric couldn't believe it. Proxima Centauri was the closest star to our sun, but it was still more than 4 light years away. With current technology, it would take thousands of years to reach it. How is that possible? He asked. I can't explain all the details. Yet, Dr. Bennett said. But I can tell you that we're building this ship right now in secret. We need a team to crew it. Eric looked at her in shock. And you're telling me this because Chuck Norris thinks you have the right character for our mission, Dr. Bennett said. And after looking into your background, I agree with him. She touched the screen again. A list of names appeared. This is our current team. We need one more person with your specific engineering background. You want me to work on this ship? Eric asked. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. No, Mr. Collins. Dr. Bennett looked him in the eyes. I want you to fly on it. Eric sat back down. His legs felt weak. Dr. Bennett sat across from him again. This mission will be dangerous, she said. We don't know what's out there. We need people who can make the right decisions under pressure, people who put others first. Like helping an old man instead of going to a job interview, Eric said quietly. Exactly. Dr. Bennett slid a thick folder across the desk to him. This contains information about the project. You'll need to sign the security papers before you can read it. Take a few days to think about it. This isn't a small thing we're asking. Eric looked at the folder. His whole life had led to this moment, though he had never imagined it would come this way. What if I say no? He asked. Then you walk out of here, forget everything I've told you, and we'll find you a good position elsewhere in Horizon, Dr. Bennett said. There's no wrong choice here. Eric thought about his tiny apartment, about the model rockets on his shelves, about looking up at the stars as a child and wondering what was out there. He thought about Frank Martinez on the sidewalk, and how stopping to help him had changed everything. I don't need a few days, Eric said. He reached for the security papers. Where do I sign? Dr. Bennett smiled. Welcome to Project Starlight, Mr. Collins. As Eric signed the papers, he felt like his life was splitting into before and after. Before was everything that had led him here. After was something he couldn't even imagine yet. When do I start? He asked. Right now, Dr. Bennett said. She pressed a button on her desk. Judy, please take Mr. Collins to meet the rest of the team. Judy appeared at the door with a smile and a badge that had Eric's name on it. As he clipped it to his jacket, Eric knew that his life would never be the same again, all because he had stopped to help a stranger on the street. Judy led Eric down a long hall to an elevator. This one needed both a keycard and a fingerprint scan to operate. They went down instead of up, deep below the Horizon building. How far down are we going? Eric asked. 6 levels below ground, Judy said. That's where Project Starlight is based. When the elevator doors opened, Eric saw a huge open space filled with activity. Men and women in white lab coats moved between workstations. Large screens covered the walls. Models and parts of machines were everywhere. Judy led Eric to a group of people gathered around a table. There were 4 of them, 2 men and 2 women. They looked up as Eric approached. Everyone, this is Eric Collins, Judy said. Eric, meet the Starlight crew. A tall woman with dark skin stepped forward first. She had short black hair and a strong handshake. Kate Wilson, ship's captain, she said. Welcome aboard. Next was a man with sandy hair and glasses. Ben Rogers, navigation specialist, he said. I'll be plotting our course to Proxima Centauri. A shorter woman with a ponytail shook Eric's hand next. Susan Grant, ship's doctor and biology specialist, she said. I'll be keeping everyone alive and studying whatever we find out there. The last person was an older man with gray in his beard. Paul Warren, chief engineer, he said. You'll be working with me on the ship's systems. Eric shook each of their hands, trying to remember their names and faces. These people would be his crew, his team, his family in space. Nice to meet you all, he said. I'm Eric Collins. I'm still not sure why I'm here, but I'm happy to be part of the team. Kate smiled. Dr. Bennett told us about you. We need someone with your skills, but more importantly, we need someone with your character. Space is dangerous. We need people we can trust. Paul put a hand on Eric's shoulder. Come on, let me show you what you'll be working on. Paul led Eric across the big room to a separate area. Inside was a model of the ship's engine. It looked like nothing Eric had ever seen before. "This is the heart of Project Starlight," Paul said. "We call it the Hammond Drive after the scientist who discovered the principle behind it. It uses quantum tunneling to fold space around the ship." Eric looked at the engine with wonder. "How fast can it go? In theory?" "About half the speed of light," Paul said. "That means we could reach Proxima Centauri in about 9 years. Eric did the math in his head. "But even at half light speed, the crew would age 9 years during the trip." Paul smiled. "That's where the second breakthrough comes in. The Hammond Drive creates a time dilation effect. For every year that passes for us on the ship, only about a month will pass on Earth." Eric's mind raced with the implications. "So, when we come back, everyone we know will be much older." Paul finished for him. "It's a one-way trip in many ways. We'll return to a different world." Eric thought about Frank and Chuck Norris, about his parents and friends. By the time he returned, many of them might be gone. "It's a lot to think about," Paul said, seeing Eric's face. "We all had to make the same choice. Take some time." Over the next few weeks, Eric trained with the Starlight team. He learned about the Hammond Drive and the other systems of the ship. He studied the mission plans and the data they had on Proxima, Centauri and its planets. Every evening he would go home to his small apartment and try to process everything he had learned. Sometimes he called Frank to talk, though he couldn't tell him the details of the project. "How's the new job?" Frank would ask. "Amazing," Eric would say. "But also scary." "All the best things are a little scary," Frank would tell him. One evening, about a month after he had joined Project Starlight, Eric got a call from Dr. Bennett. "We need you to come in tomorrow for a special meeting," she said. "There's someone who wants to meet the whole crew." The next day, Eric arrived at Horizon. Early, he went down to the Starlight level and found the rest of the crew already gathered in the main room. Dr. Bennett was there too, looking more formal than usual in a dark suit. "Good morning, everyone," she said when Eric joined them. "Today we have a special visitor. He's been a supporter of Project Starlight from the beginning, and he specifically asked to meet all of you." The elevator doors opened and Chuck Norris walked into the room. He looked just like he did in the movies and TV shows, though a bit older. He wore a simple black shirt and jeans. Eric couldn't believe it. Chuck Norris was here, in person. The man who had changed his life with one phone call. Dr. Bennett introduced each crew member to Chuck. When she got to Eric, Chuck smiled. "We've spoken on the phone," he said, shaking Eric's hand. "It's good to meet you in person." "It's an honor, sir," Eric said. "Thank you for giving me this chance." Chuck looked at the whole crew. "I've been involved with Horizon for many years. I believe in what you're doing here. This mission will change humanity forever." He walked over to look at a model of the Starlight ship that stood in the center of the room. "This ship will take you farther than any humans have ever gone," he said. "You'll face dangers we can't even imagine. But I believe in each of you. You were chosen not just for your skills, but for who you are as people." He turned back to face them. "I've known Dr. Bennett for 30 years. I trust her judgment. She says you're the right team for this mission, and that's good enough for me." After the meeting, Chuck asked to speak with Eric alone. They walked to a quiet corner of the room. "How's Frank doing?" Chuck asked. "He's good," Eric said. "I visit him when I can. He's been a good friend to me." Chuck nodded. "Frank's one of the best men I've ever known. He saved my life once, did he tell you that?" "He mentioned it, but he didn't give details." "That's Frank. Never one to brag." Chuck looked at Eric closely. "Are you ready for this mission? Really ready? It's going to change your life." Eric thought about everything he had learned in the past month, about the risks and the unknowns, about leaving Earth behind. "I think so," he said honestly. "It's scary, but it feels right." Chuck smiled. "That's exactly how it should feel. The best choices in life are the ones that scare you a little." He put a hand on Eric's shoulder. "Frank was right about you. You've got what it takes." As Chuck left, Eric felt a strange sense of coming full circle. It had all started with helping Frank on the street. Now he was part of something bigger than he had ever imagined. A mission to the stars. That evening, Eric went to visit Frank. He brought pizza and they sat in Frank's small kitchen. "I met your friend Chuck today," Eric said. Frank smiled. "He's something, isn't he? Did he give you his serious face and tell you he believes in you?" Eric laughed. "How did you know?" "Because that's Chuck," Frank said. "But when he says it, he means it." Eric wished he could tell Frank everything, about the ship and the mission and where he was going. But he had signed those security papers. Some secrets had to be kept. "Whatever you're doing at Horizon," Frank said, "I'm proud of you, son." Eric smiled. Coming from Frank, that meant everything. 2 years passed quickly. Eric worked hard with the Starlight team to prepare for their mission. He learned about the ship's systems. He trained in simulators. He studied the data on Proxima Centauri and its planets. Every day brought them closer to launch. The ship grew from plans to reality. Eric watched as each piece came together. The Hammond drive was installed. The living quarters were built. The control systems were tested again and again. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. One morning, Dr. Bennett called the crew together for a meeting. "It's time," she said simply. "The ship is ready. Launch is scheduled for next month." Eric felt his heart beat faster. After all the preparation, it was finally happening. They were going to the stars. "We'll be making the public announcement tomorrow," Dr. Bennett continued. "Your names and faces will be all over the news. Are you ready for that?" Eric thought about Frank. He had kept his promise not to tell anyone about the mission. Now Frank would finally know where Eric was going. The next day, Dr. Bennett held a press conference. She stood in front of the Horizon logo and told the world about Project Starlight. She explained about the Hammond drive and the mission to Proxima Centauri. Then she introduced the crew. As Eric stood with his teammates, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. It was overwhelming. But Eric felt proud. He was part of something important, something that would change human history. After the press conference, his phone rang. It was Frank. "The stars?" Frank said when Eric answered. "You're going to the stars? Why didn't you tell me?" "I couldn't," Eric said. "It was secret until now." Frank was quiet for a moment. 9 years there and 9 years back. That's a long time, son. "For me," Eric said, "but only about a year and a half for you because of the time effect." "Still," Frank said, "I'm an old man. A year and a half is a long time at my age." Eric hadn't thought about that. Frank was in his 70s now. Would he still be here when Eric returned? "I want you to meet me for dinner tonight," Frank said. "Bring your crew if you want, I'm cooking." That evening, Eric and his teammates went to Frank's apartment. Frank had made a big meal. There was roast chicken and potatoes and vegetables. There was apple pie for dessert. As they ate, Frank told stories about his time in the army. He told them about flying helicopters in dangerous places. He told them about his friendship with Chuck Norris. The crew listened with interest. They asked questions. They told their own stories. By the end of the evening, Eric felt like they were all family. When it was time to leave, Frank hugged each of them. "Take care of each other up there," he said. "Space is big and empty. You'll need each other." Eric was the last to leave. Frank stopped him at the door. "I'm proud of you," Frank said. "Remember that when you're far from home." Eric hugged the old man tightly. "I will." The weeks before launch went by in a blur. There were more tests, more training, more press events. Eric packed his few personal items that he could take on the ship. A photo of his parents. A small model rocket his father had helped him build as a child. A new picture of himself with Frank and Chuck Norris, taken at a special dinner Horizon had arranged. The night before launch, Eric couldn't sleep. He stood by his window and looked up at the stars. Tomorrow, he would be heading toward one of those tiny points of light. It seemed impossible. His phone rang. It was Chuck Norris. "Nervous?" Chuck asked. "A little," Eric admitted. "That's normal," Chuck said. "I was nervous before every dangerous mission, but you're ready. You've trained. You have a good team." "Thanks," Eric said, "for everything." None of this would have happened if you hadn't called me that day. None of it would have happened if you hadn't helped Frank, Chuck said. Remember that. One good deed led to all of this. The next morning, Eric and the crew arrived at the launch site. It was in a remote desert area, far from any city. The Starlight ship stood on a launch pad, tall and silver in the early light. There was a crowd of people there to see them off. Officials from Horizon, scientists who had worked on the project, family members of the crew, and in the front row were Frank and Chuck standing side by side. The crew wore their flight suits, blue with the Starlight patch on the shoulder. They walked toward the ship as people cheered. Eric waved to Frank and Chuck as he passed. Inside the ship, they took their positions. Kate in the captain's chair, Ben at navigation, Susan at the medical station, Paul and Eric at engineering. All systems check, Kate said. One by one, they reported ready. Eric's hands moved over his controls, checking that everything was working properly. The ship hummed with power. T-minus 10 minutes to launch, came a voice over the radio. It was Dr. Bennett from Mission Control. As they waited, Eric thought about everything that had brought him here. The missed interview, helping Frank, the call from Chuck Norris, meeting Dr. Bennett, all the training and preparation. T-minus 1 minute. Eric took a deep breath. This was it. They were really going. 10, 9, 8. The ship began to vibrate as the first stage engines powered up. 7, 6, 5. Eric glanced at his teammates. They all looked focused, ready. 4, 3, 2. He thought of Frank standing outside watching, the old man who had changed his life by needing help at just the right moment. 1, 0. Launch. The ship rose from the pad in a burst of fire and smoke. Eric felt the push of gravity as they accelerated upward. The blue sky outside the viewports darkened to black. The stars came out, bright and clear. They were in space. The first part of their journey had begun. 3 days later, they reached the point where they would activate the Hammond drive. They had done hundreds of system checks. Everything was ready. Prepare for Hammond drive activation, Kate said. Eric and Paul worked at their stations, starting the complex sequence that would power up the drive. Numbers and data flowed across their screens. Ready on my mark, Kate said. 3, 2, 1, mark. Eric pressed the final activation button. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the view outside the ship changed. The stars stretched into lines of light. The ship hummed with a new kind of energy. Hammond drive is active and stable, Paul reported. We are now traveling at 0.5 light speed. The crew looked at each other. They had done it. They were on their way to another star. That night, in his small cabin, Eric took out the photo of himself with Frank and Chuck. He pinned it to the wall beside his bunk. We're on our way, he said to the picture. I'll tell you all about it when I get back. Outside his viewport, the stretched stars made streaks of light across the blackness of space. Ahead was Proxima Centauri, still invisible to the naked eye, but growing closer with each passing second. Eric Collins, who had once missed a job interview to help a stranger, was going to the stars.